Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony, which today commemorates the 75th anniversary of the Cowra breakout. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Chief Petty Officer David Osborne. By August 1944, there were 2,223 Japanese prisoners of war in Australia. Of these, 1,104 were housed in Camp B of Number 12 Prisoner of War compound near Cowra in the central west of New South Wales. They were guarded by the 22nd Garrison Battalion. On Friday the 4th of August, in response to information that the Japanese were discussing a mass breakout, notice was given that all Japanese prisoners below the rank of Lance Corporal would be transferred to the Hay Prisoner of War camp. By 2 a.m. on Saturday, the 5th of August 1944, a prisoner ran shouting to the camp gates. Soon afterwards, an unauthorised bugle was heard, and prisoners armed with knives and improvised clubs rushed from their huts and began breaking through the wire fences. Sentries opened fire, but several hundred prisoners escaped into open country, while others who remained set fire to the camp buildings. In the following 9 days, 334 prisoners were retaken. In all, 234 Japanese were killed and 108 wounded. On the night of the breakout, 3 Australian soldiers were killed and another 3 were wounded. Shortly, we will hear the story of Lieutenant Harry Doncaster, who was one of those killed. We're honoured this evening to welcome Mr. John King, President of the Return and Services League of Australia, ACT branch. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Harbord Public School, Freshwater. From Queensland, St Agatha's Primary School, Clayfield, and Holy Family Primary School, Indooroopilly. And from Western Australia, Lance Holt Primary School, Fremantle. Australia's Federation Guard is a tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier within the Hall of Memory. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Students, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway lands. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and in operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Harry Doncaster. Harry Doncaster was born in Ballarat East on the 17th of July, 1906, the son of William and Alice Doncaster. He grew up in Ballarat and attended school locally. Harry was an excellent athlete and particularly excelled at running. He was a member of the Ballarat YMCA Harriers Club and won numerous trophies, particularly for middle distance running events. After leaving school, he became a master stonemason and a monumental mason, or maker of tombstones. He married Jessie Laurie in 1930, and their son John was born in early 1937. Before the outbreak of the Second World War, the family was living in Doveton Street in Ballarat. Having served in the cadets at school, Doncaster continued his service in the militia until after the start of the Second World War, when he was mobilised for service with the 8th Battalion in late November 1939. During his time in uniform, he acquired the nickname Hack. He was also known to be a crack shot with a rifle. He enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force in Ballarat on the 7th of April 1941 and was allocated to the 10th Reinforcements to the 2nd 8th Battalion. 5 months later, he embarked for the Middle East with other reinforcements sent to join the 2nd 8th Battalion, which were part of the garrison force in Syria. With the entry of Japan into the war, the 2nd 8th Battalion was ordered home to Australia in late January 1942 and was sent to the Northern Territory, where it was based around the Adelaide River, south of Darwin. In late January 1944, he was posted to the 19th Australian Infantry Training Battalion, where he became an instructor to 18-year-old recruits. In June, the commanding officer of his battalion received a warning about a possible breakout attempt by Japanese prisoners held in the camp at Cowra. Several of the battalion's officers, including Doncaster, were frustrated by the commanding officer's orders not to carry live ammunition, and in the case of the officers, not to carry sidearms. However, this did not stop them taking Owen machine carbines out during night patrols, just in case. In early August, a Japanese prisoner warned the Australians of an impending attack. The Cowra camp guards at the local training battalions went into high alert, and patrols were increased around his own camp and out towards Cowra. In the early hours of the 5th of August, the peace of the camp at Cowra was broken by a bugle call, the signal for a mass breakout by the Japanese prisoners of war. At an orders group later that afternoon, the officers of the 19th Training Battalion had been told not to carry personal weapons and that their men would only be armed with bayonets in scabbards. Doncaster and another officer intended to defy this order, but the order group went too long that when it ended, they were forced to load up on the trucks immediately with their men. By this stage, it had been over 12 hours since the breakout. Unable to retrieve his pistol, Doncaster turned to his fellow platoon commanders, Lieutenant Stan Platts, and said, "I don't like this, Platsy. We should have at least been given our revolvers." By the time Doncaster and his platoon were dropped off, the daylight was waning. As the men made their way up Wooded Hill, Doncaster spotted several Japanese and called them to stop. Armed with knives and clubs, the Japanese advanced on Doncaster. Unfortunately for him, his trainees had become increasingly unsettled as they advanced into the twilight. Now they broke and abandoned their leader, with several of them being pursued by the Japanese. Harry Doncaster went down fighting. He picked up a large rock, which he threw at one of the Japanese before being surrounded by as many as 10 Japanese armed with knives, nail-studded baseball bats and clubs. Doncaster resorted to his fists, but despite a valiant attempt to hold his attackers at bay, he was stabbed and then bludgeoned to death. A number of the culprits committed suicide soon after their bodies were found during the night and the next day. Harry Doncaster's body was recovered soon after by another platoon, Later, he was laid to rest in the Cowra War Cemetery. He was 38 years old. After the Cowra breakout, several inquiries were held which called into question the slow response from the training battalions in mounting search parties. Had search parties been sent out during that morning, Doncaster, who would still be returning from leave, would have not been among them, and the Japanese would have been confined to a much smaller area of the camp. Today, a memorial stands near the spot where Harry Doncaster was killed. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my left amongst 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Harry Doncaster, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys and students, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.